So our first presenter is Rebecca Romanchuk. She's going to present EAD Export Cleanup, Meeting Best Practices for Texas Archival Resources Online. Rebecca is an archivist at the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. She serves as a team lead for other archivists to guide processing and provide guidance in other work areas. She appraises, processes, and provides access to state records and artifacts, and she serves as her institution's ArchivesSpace administrator. This sounds familiar. She's also involved with Texas Archival Resources Online as co-chair of its standards subcommittee and as chair-elect of its steering committee. Rebecca?
Okay, great. Thanks, Jessica. So, good morning. I'll be giving a brief overview of an approach we're beginning to take at the Texas State Archives to gain all the benefits, thank you, all the benefits of creating finding aids using ArchivesSpace while keeping one foot in the world of EAD. Our goal is to spend a minimal amount of time keeping these two parallel processes going. So we began using the accessions module in 2017 and consider that to be a success and almost a piece of cake. We still have legacy data that we're working on importing. We've also developed a great way to enter appraisal reports into ArchivesSpace, and my colleague Anna Resnick will be talking about that here later this morning. Resources are still a long road we have yet to travel, but we're preparing for that in several ways. We've started testing out how we'll create resources while keeping in mind how we'll export and transform those into EAD finding aids that will continue to contribute to the statewide EAD consortium, Texas Archival Resources Online, of which TSLAC is one of the founding members. If you're creating EAD at an archives in Texas, chances are about 100% that you're contributing those EAD finding aids to Taro. Taro has existed for 20 years and keeps adding new members. It's up to about 50 members now. Taro is one of the 14 active EAD consortia in the nation and is based here at UT. It was recently awarded an NEH implementation grant to make many improvements to its system and display that hasn't changed much in those 20 years if you go to that website. Taro accepts only EAD 2002 schema files, which is still the norm for EAD aggregators in the US. This probably makes our export cleanup process a bit more complicated than if we could export EAD 3 schema files, but it's where we're at right now. Although if we decided not to take these cleanup steps for our files, that wouldn't be a problem in Taro. Taro wants to keep repositories using ASpace and Archon as active Taro members, and it has a few simple instructions to ensure exported EAD from those systems works in Taro. And Taro shares these instructions on its Taro Today blog, which is publicized to its members. For ASpace, making sure that certain repository fields and the EAD ID field have correct data entered is really all that needs to be done, in addition to exporting as numbered C tags and making local decisions about unpublished tags and DAO tags. Though we've found some data may export as invalid EAD, such as agent and subject source attribute values. For some reason, we're having trouble with merging those invalid values into the valid ones. We also use links in certain parts of our finding aids to cite sources and related material, and those need to have Xlink attributes added to them to be valid in EAD 2002. Even so, the simple instructions for making exported EAD valid don't bring the code at all close to the EAD best practice guidelines that Taro asks but doesn't require its members to comply with. The BPG, as we call it, follows standards used by the major national EAD aggregators, which themselves follow national and international descriptive standards. The bar is still set very low for EAD files to be accepted by Taro. Only baseline requirements need to be met. Basically, is it a well-formed and valid EAD XML file? Does it have a valid file name? And does it have certain attributes set in the EAD header and EAD ID? Aside from a few other rules, that's good enough. But if an ArchivesSpace member, like TSLAC, wants to submit EAD files that conform to the BPG, a lot more intervention is needed post-export. At various parts of the EAD file, attributes are missing that make the file not comply with the BPG, or ASpace specific attributes appear that aren't needed and may be problematic in the future, though that can't be known yet. It may be that some of these things can be resolved within ASpace, but until we make those discoveries, we need to do those cleanup tasks post-export. While only some of this must be fixed before uploading the file to Taro, we wonder how code that wouldn't appear in our hand-encoded EAD files will play in a future search function that Taro will be constructing within the next 3 years. Should we wait to find out if it'll be a problem? Or develop a way to clean up the code now to keep it more consistent with our past encoding? We decided to go ahead and take the plunge. Multiple staff from different work units are engaged in this workflow. The goal is to be doing most of our work in the ASpace resource and export an EAD version only when necessary, and to make post-export cleanup as quick and simple as possible. The EAD finding aid is still the public version of the finding aid for TSLAC. We're not using the public interface yet as such. So, we'd still be more comfortable using the EAD version for peer review, but we may decide to give up doing that. We may also rely on a MARC record exported from ASpace for cataloging purposes instead of the full EAD finding aid. We'll probably stick with sharing the EAD finding aid with our digital program staff, since the EAD inventory display is more streamlined. At every step, editing should happen only in the resource record, with only minimal manual cleanup steps needed after applying the style sheet that transforms the exported EAD into more BPG-compliant EAD. Our brilliant technical support staff member, Brian Thomas, wrote an XSL style sheet to perform these cleanup tasks for us. Our goal is to conform as closely as we can with Taro's BPG and perhaps reap more benefits of Taro's future improved search function. The steps the archivists will take to apply the transform style sheet are very simple, quick, and already familiar to them. The manual edits needed afterward are minor. Since we're using EAD 2002, we need to add those Xlink attributes to linking elements. Single dates need attributes added post-export. Punctuation and spacing for index term entries is adjusted. And we've been pairing genre form with extent as a measure to ease migration to EAD 3, though this may be unnecessary if we migrate to EAD 3 by exporting our resources as that version. We're still testing this method to make it as efficient as possible, and we'll be using more efficient processing techniques as we go forward, which should also help to minimize time spent on creating our EAD files. Once we have our tools and instructions for this method more finalized, we'll share them in the space reserved on the Society of Southwest Archivists website for ArchivesSpace resources. We've already shared our accessioning and appraisal instructions there. If anyone here is in the SSA region and would like to share their own instructions and tools, you can go to this webpage to find out how. And actually, you'll see my own email listed there as the contact. So as Jessica said, we're holding questions until the end of the plenary presentations. And if anyone wants to offer advice on improving this method that we've developed, I'd really welcome that. So please feel free to find me afterward. Thanks.